All right. Next is from Alex Figueroa in the subject is better segments. Hello, team. With the new AEW show taking the time of the old WCW Saturday night slot, is another shot at them trying to simulate WCW. If they get mad when Bischoff calls him out on it. Question: do you guys think they'll ever produce comedic gold as WCW did back in the day? I included a link to this hidden gem of a segment. You want to pull this up, Joe? Let me see how long this is.
It's like 3.5 minutes, but if you want to watch a little bit of it.
Nah, forget it. Don't worry about this. Yeah, don't post this. This like that segment's not like as epic as this person
silly,
thought.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It was all right. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. They're just the last thing the AEW needs is more shows. They need less shows and more context being put into the shows they have. So I don't know.
Did you see his PS here?
What did it say?
Kendrick Perkins picked the Lakers going all the way. Doesn't seem that far-fetched now.
We'll see. They look good. They're punking these Memphis guys, that's for sure. Next from Isaiah D, and the subject is kayfabe and nostalgia.
Let me just say this real quick. Those two games yesterday were two of the best games I've seen. The playoffs have been great.
Yeah,
but that Jimmy Butler performance and Lakers performance and the games were just incredible.
Next is from Isaiah D, and the subject is kayfabe and nostalgia. What's up, Conan and the crew? I've been thinking lately that I enjoyed wrestling a lot more when I was a kid and believed most of what happened. Nowadays, some of the fun is taken out when we all as fans get too focused on the backstage drama and what is kayfabe or not. Sometimes I just want to watch, be entertained, and have fun discussions about matches, but it's difficult to have regular discussions without people bringing up the negative things constantly. Do you guys ever get exhausted from the inside baseball stuff taking up most of the discussions? P.S. I just want to say that as a black kid in the 90s, it felt represented by Conan because he was hood and sharing the screen with people like Hogan, Flair, and Bret Hart. It was special that ethnic wrestlers got to be themselves and represent on TV. Rey Mysterio is still my hero, and Conan was cool as in WCW. My friends and I loved beating the shit out of Disco in the old video games. All right, let's suspend the guy for that. Because that's can incite violence and harm against me.
Would you call that racial profiling, Joe?
Yeah, for
sure.
No,
just he's inciting violence and harm.
It's anti-Italian discrimination is what it is.
Right, and he's inciting violence and harm. All right. No, I don't know. No, we're involved in the inside stuff because we have to talk like we do all these emails and.
Well, I think here's the thing. What's the guy's name?
Isaiah.
Listen, Isaiah. I think I'm past being exhausted to. It is what it is for me now, right? And you got to remember, you're in the hardcore wrestling bubble. You're listening to podcasts. You're on Twitter. A lot of the people that aren't hardcores, they're not on Twitter. They're not on the wrestling bubble. They're not reading the Observer, and they don't give a fuck. They just go and enjoy the show. They watch it at home on TV, and when the show's in their hometown, they all get together and they go watch it. It's a strong vocal minority, that thinks they know it all. And, and if you don't agree with them, they try to bury you. But I think people already know our show, our stilo for 7 years. You're not going to bother us. You're not going to intimidate us. You're not going to make us do what you want us to do. And I think that's part of our popularity. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. People are going to be going fake outrage, over the top outrage, but that's an extension of society.
Yeah, and from what he said about too much inside baseball, when I read this earlier, I kind of thought, well, what's the opposite? Would podcasts where they act like wrestling's a shoot? I mean, would anybody listen to that? I mean, that's just the way wrestling is now. People know that it's a work, and they kind of want to hear that salacious or backstage or booking spoilers. That's what they want to hear,
Next is from let me see here. Next from Diego, and the subject is music. Sup, fellas? As I drive around listening to music and different podcasts, including K100, I can't help but wonder what kind of music did the guys listen to back in the day. What is that? The noise is a little bit too much now.
Dogs tearing up a box that just got here from Federal Express.
All right, well, put the mute button on, please. What was the soundtrack, so to say, during these peak WCW years when Di and Conan were there? And I'd also like to know what were the luchadors in Mexico was listening to during Conan's time wrestling there. Thanks for the podcast, and that's Diego from the Bay. Diego, we listen to a lot of house music because we were always going to clubs and like in the car we'd listen to house music sometimes because it was always kind of cool back in the late '90s and stuff everything. So and classic rock. Would you agree with that, Conan? That's what we listen to.
Yeah, but I was listening at that time. I was listening to a lot of hip hop and rap.
Right. Next is from Dale M. Fortunio, and the subject is a feature. What's up, guys? A few weeks ago, you mentioned how young wrestlers go all out to get over, and they pay the price in the future. Looking at guys like Ospreay and Jeff Hardy, how would you transition to safer work style that made the fans turn on you because you aren't, quote, what made you popular anymore, unquote? I remember CC Sabathia changed his pitching style, became a very efficient pitcher later on in his career. However, that isn't exactly contact sport. How would you change to still remain relevant? Bonus. Congratulations on one of the few people living who wasn't named in the Rhaka lawsuit. Did you hear about that Rhaka lawsuit, Conan?
No.
Okay. All right. I gotta read
right.
you this. Holy, because I was sending that to somebody yesterday. Give me 1 sec. I'll get it. Go on, Di.
And by the way, I would just say, bro, just don't take as many big bumps, which these guys love to do. You know, just don't take as many big bumps. Is the first thing that they should do to correct everything. Like
Not necessarily. It's not necessary. Once you become like you've gotten over at a certain point in your career, you don't have to keep doing that to maintain the people's interest. Because it's almost like, give me a Joe that the lead singer doesn't really have the chops he used to, but people,
Motley Crue, Bon Jovi.
Crue. So you go see Motley Crue, which is a group I liked when I was younger, and you're like, all right, Vince Neil doesn't have the chops he used to. He probably still has showmanship, right?
Yeah.
You know, you remember those songs from when you were growing up, and you still dig Motley Crue.
Yeah.
You know, you remember Jeff Hardy, you know, from your childhood. This was a guy that you grew up watching with Matt, and you know all the ladder matches they had with Dudleys and Christian and Edge and all that, and you know, he doesn't have to do that anymore. You understand he's older. You know, just the fact that he goes out there, he's in shape, and he can have you don't need to do that stuff.
That's a good example because, like, Robert Plant from Zeppelin changed his singing style to be different. Vince Neil, when he can't hit a note, he'll just hold the mic out to the crowd. The crowd will sing the line. You know, there's ways to adapt like that. But
you got the Rhaka.
Yeah, let me read this. Let me read this to you.
This is
crazy.
hysterical.
So her lawsuit is claiming a conspiracy against a conspiracy in relation to an ongoing Texas criminal case on charges of interference with child custody and aggravated kidnapping. The 48-page lawsuit alleges the defendants conspired to kidnap the plaintiff and her child, and the paperwork mostly consists of the list of defendants, some who have been listed multiple times. So here's a list of defendants that have conspired allegedly and in this lawsuit to
conspired together.
Yeah, together to kidnap Rhaka and her children. Connie, you're never going to believe this, man. The state of Texas, the El Paso Child Protective Services, the FBI, New Mexico Police Department, NYPD.
Wait, and they filed this in federal court in the Southern District
in
of New York, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the one that likes going after Trump. So I bet you she figured like, I don't know. Go ahead.
Two different fraternities: the Shirley Police Department, Suffolk County, New York, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the Miz and Maurice, Heath Slater, Nikki Bella, Chris Benoit, Mark Jindrak, Panda Energy, Home Depot.
Jindrak was behind with some of that. I will agree with that.
Yeah.
Home Depot, Florida Championship Wrestling, Steve Kern, the NWA, Billy Corgan, Deep South Wrestling, Bank of America.
Behind it for sure.
Yeah.
Bank of America, Michael Jordan, several universities,
Michael Jordan. Did you say Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan. Chris Benoit, too, I mentioned, but several universities, Jim Cornette, Mick Foley, New York City area energy company Con Edison, and more. And the lawsuit just proceeded. Like, these guys have been served.
Bro, how can the lawyer not get disbarred for filing this?
I think the lawyer is Mark Sterling. Nothing. He's really going to get
that would be hysterical if he was the lawyer, right?
Right. So, do me a favor.
I mean, you're not allowed to do. It's my understanding you're not allowed to file such frivolous lawsuits. You can lose your license.
Well,
can't you?
She must be on Flocka. But anyway, or fentanyl. I would. When you get a chance, because I'm sure that guy Brian Last will ask that question to Jim Cornette.
Mm-hmm. He already did. They already did. Yeah.
Want me to send it to you?
Send me his response. Yeah.
Well, it's a 20-minute video they did clip. They did on it. So, okay. Next is from Dale Fortunio. The subject is the subject is a feature. What's up, guys? A few weeks ago, you mentioned how young wrestlers go all out to get over. Oh no, hang on, I already read this. Next one is from.
Oh, we have a live response here. You know that calls
what?
for. We have a live response here. But Chris says, I never said that. I always got along with Dennis. He showed up drunk to a match once, but maybe that's what I was talking about. So Chris says he never, yeah.
Okay, so it's fake news from the wrestling community again.
Yep,
Thank you.
Fake news.
And I was going to say that. Can you imagine Chris never said that? Yeah.
Yeah. So the wrestling dirt sheet community produces more fake news. Fantastic.
They won't.
Does that since that was proven to be fake news, Disco? Are you going to retract your statement where you said Chris is an for calling Dennis?
Of course not. Next is from Fall Vampire. The subject is the ultimate punker. Wrestling Bio's content gets brought up a lot here, mostly because he's awesome. But I have to ask K100 in this. On his recently Reliving the Wars episode, he's now at the Nitro. And
real quick, what's Wrestling Bios?
I guess it's a video channel that does.
Yeah, they do like biographies of careers of different guys and stories about like here's the story of Lesnar versus The Rock.
So Reliving the Wars episode he is now at the Nitro when Ultimate Warrior made his big debut in WCW, and there was a ton of buzz and people were expecting some incredible stuff to happen. And within 3 weeks, the buzz had worn off and it was all back to normal for WCW. My question is, isn't this exactly what happened with CM Punk and AEW? Right now, some are talking about Punk's AEW 2023 return like it's a big deal, but in reality, guys like Bischoff are saying that it really means nothing. Conan, Disco, and Joe, I would love your take on this. Is CM Punk more or less the modern-day version of the Ultimate Warrior? A lot of fans looks cool backstage and generally not the right choice for the top guy in the company. P.S. The stuff that comes out of Conan's dog's is more likable than Billy Body. Interesting. I'll say, Eric had a pretty good take on Punk where he just basically said that they just cut the cord because he hadn't been worth it to the ratings. But I would disagree with Eric in that the ratings aren't good, and he's at least means something. Like he's one of the only guys you can point a finger at and say that guy's actually draw numbers. He's like one of the only ones. Like if you did the metrics of their numbers and stuff, and thing like who's drawing, like Darby, I think does pretty good in the numbers, but Punk for sure was a guy that like even though the numbers weren't great, they were better than other people. So I would say I don't know. Bro, that company's got a lot of problems. They don't do good. They don't do a lot of character development. They don't do a lot of storylines. They just keep throwing, announcing matches, throwing them out there. Not a lot of build up. And Punk kind of did good TV when he was there, even though it didn't draw that great. It drew better. So what do you think?
Yeah, I remember when he first came on, you and me had the discussion about what type of impact he would have. And I said that place is going to melt when he comes out and he's going to pop a rating, which he did. But then the problem was, and I hear it was Punk and not Tony, that he wanted to wrestle with these young talents. But he was wrestling with young talents that, number one, weren't over and to this day still aren't over. The Lee Moriartys and all these other people that he was wrestling. And in my mind, it was like, bro, you don't do what Punk wants. You do what the fans want, And that was a big mistake. They mishandled him coming back because as we both, and this is something me and Disco agreed on, if all of a sudden Nate Diaz is coming back, you don't put him against Joe Schmo from Kalamazoo with a named guy, Jorge Masvidal, something that's going to pop.
You throw him in there with a top guy.
Right, and they did not do that.
No, for a while they didn't do that.
So they hit him with MJF,
Yeah.